Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning in to LL3 Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date, Monday, June 8th, 2020. Sometimes, you got folks can't comprehend a few things. Everyone's jumping on that bandwagon defunding the police, which I support reforming. Two different things. When you defund, they don't want peacekeepers out there. It's a form of cultural Marxism. NWO coup. And of course, federalization, federal subsidies didn't help out either for these particular institutions that manifested over it, including the police departments in the state of Florida. Everyone goes, yes, I support it. We will have to lick the boots of tyranny. So it's like a double-edged sword, what we're seeing right now. It's been building up for a very long time. I was against starting the Department of Homeland Security a few days after September 11th. I was only 32 years old at the time. Questioned immediately. I was not impressed. It reminds me of that movie, Escape from New York. The U.S. police force was formed. Yeah, something to look at. For sure. Always got to see things in a broader picture. I do support my local police. But when it comes to tyranny, I call them all out. They're just an example. One thing you always got to learn. When is the institution, movement, or an entity, expect infiltrators, provocateurs, tyrants in these realms. This is part of human nature. It's been happening for millenniums, my friends. All you gotta do is study history real deep. It's self-explanatory. Cause and effect make things into reality. Social engineering. It's socially engineered on what we see. And some folks can't comprehend, technically the police aren't obligated on a particular individual. And they just like to digress and ramble, and I'm not condemning. I'm not going to say any names. They're good people out there. They just don't learn. They haven't learned these things. And that's a flaw a lot of us have. When it comes to these areas, we got to really know the facts. The human element. So, this one of those things. Always gotta go, how deep does the rabbit hole go? Everyone just goes for face value, but never focus on the fine print. And it's happening, it happens all the time. And we've all been swindled one way or the other. But whatever you do, folks, please don't make it a habitual offense. And I say that out of love and in good faith. Alright. I'm going to be discussing just a brief article pertaining to the USS Liberty, the 53rd anniversary from Israel, about the crimes that was done by the government of Israel. I'm not going to say Israelis as a whole, because that's collective witch hunting. But the rogue elements in the Israeli government are the ones I called out. Even the ones that passed. So, I was like looking through Facebook. Scott Horton show brought this out. This came out actually a month ago, May 5th. This was by the Unzi Review, Phil Gordari Archive. Israel's war crimes have killed Americans. If the president loves to honor the military, start with the USS Liberty. Imagine, if you will, a ship from a nation not at war with anyone sailing in international waters on a quiet June day being suddenly attacked by unidentified warplanes and torpedo boats, their markings covered up to conceal their country of origin. The vessel under attack had little to which to defend itself, but its crew heroically made sure that a large national flag was hoisted to demonstrate that this was not a belligerent in anyone's conflict. The attackers noted nationality of the vessel, but persisted in their aggression in a clear attempt to sink the ship and kill all its crew. Officers on the ship radioed that they were under attack and asked for help. But even though friendly fighter aircraft were within striking distance, were automatically dispatched, they were then mysteriously recalled. The attacks lasted for 2 hours, longer than the Pearl Harbor attack that brought about American entry into World War II, killing and wounding more than 200 of the crew. Life rafts lowered into the water as the vessel seemed to be sinking were machine gunned by attacking aircraft and torpedo boats to make escape or evacuation of the wounded impossible, but the captain and survivors worked heroically and successfully to keep the ship afloat. When the vessel finally made back to port, officers and crew were sworn to silence by their own government, and cover-up was initiated that has persisted to this day. Many of the ship's survivors have died since that day, 53 years ago, and attempts of the reminder to see justice before they are also gone have been ignored. I am, of course, referring to the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty, which took place on June 8, 1967, nearly 53 years ago. The anniversary of the attack is coming up in a month, as the remaining officers and crew will hold a ceremony at the Naval Memorial in Washington, D.C. to honor the memory of their 34 shipmates killed and the 172 who were wounded. 70% of the crew were casualties, the highest percentage of casualties on any ship that remained afloat in the history of the U.S. Navy. The lightly armed intelligence gathering vessel Liberty and its heroic crew emerged from the near destruction as the most decorated ship for valor in a single action in the United States Navy. Israeli willingness to attack and kill Americans unnecessarily, apparently to send a message, has been noted before. There is a case of Richard Corey run over by an Israeli bulldozer, and of Fukin Dogan, a Turkish-American who was, like the crew of the Liberty, killed in international wars when he sailed on the Gaza relief vessel Mavi Marmara. But in spite of that, the deliberate attempt to destroy the Liberty, which, according to former U.S. Secretary of State Dean Rusk, was clearly approved at the highest level of the Jewish state's government, still has shock value. Israel's apologists, a virtual fixture at all levels in the U.S. government as well as in academia and in the media, have been long making the argument that the attack on the Liberty was some kind of friendly fire accident, but the relatively recently discovered that Navy spy plane intercepted and recorded Israeli both helicopter and fighter pilots mentioning the American flag displayed by the ship during the attack suggested otherwise. Other recordings made of the Israeli communications revealed that some of the pilots did not want to attack. One pilot said, "This is an American ship. I can see the flag. Do you still want us to attack?" Israel's ground control responded, "Yes, follow orders, hit it," before admonishing the pilots to finish the job. But while one expects the Israelis to behave abominably based on any assessment of the years of war crimes committed in places like Lebanon and what remains of Palestine, the greatest crime against the Liberty crew was committed by the United States government itself. President Lyndon B. Johnson and Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara reportedly were informed of the attack shortly after it began, and it was Johnson who twice personally ordered the recall of the U.S. fighter planes to rescue the Liberty. Admiral Lawrence Geese, commander of the carrier group in the Mediterranean that the plane had launched from, objected, and McNamara responded testily that President Johnson is not going to go to war to embarrass an American ally over a few sailors. It was McNamara acting on LBJ's orders, who had the crew sequestered after the ship made it to Malta, issuing a gag order over the incident with the understanding that anyone who spoke up would be secretly court-martialed and imprisoned. To maintain the cover-up, Captain William McGonagall, who was rewarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his role in saving the ship, had his medal awarded without any publicity in a private ceremony at the Washington Naval Yard rather than at the White House, as was otherwise normal. The President of the United States did not make the award, yet another dismissal of the valor of the Liberty crew. Normally, an attack on the U.S. Navy vessel would have mandated an official court of inquiry, but in the case of the Liberty, an improvised team consisting of Admiral Isaac Kidd and Chief Counsel Ward Boston was pulled together in the Mediterranean under orders from Admiral John S. McCain, father of the Senator John McCain, who was based in London. So Admiral John S. McCain the second, all right? The Navy official court of inquiry, therefore, consisted in reality of just Kidd and Boston making a quick visit to the Liberty at sea and then rushing back to Washington via London, where McCain endorsed a 700-page draft document without reading it. The hastily prepared report bypassed all ordinary fact-finding and legal review procedures, and no one knows what the channels the findings of the Court of Inquiry followed in Washington. Acting under orders from the White House, the inquiry had been given only a week to prepare its report, a procedure that normally requires 6 months. The result was also predetermined by McNamara acting for LBJ, who ordered that the conclusion would be the attack on the Liberty had been mistaken, case of mistaken identity. No crewmen from the Liberty were even allowed to provide formal testimony during the inquiry proceedings. Nevertheless, the inquiry's chief counsel, Ward Boston, subsequently confirmed in a sworn affidavit that he and Kidd had strongly disagreed with the Court's findings, believing instead that Israel had staged an unprovoked attack intending to sink the ship and kill the crew. Admiral Kidd referred to Israelis as murderous bastards. Boston also observed that the transcript of the Court of Inquiry that was subsequently released had been altered, presumably by someone acting on behalf of the White House, to delete and change the testimony damaging to Israel. As is often the case, there is a backstory of what happened to the Liberty. In the years prior to the attack on the Liberty, President John F. Kennedy was concerned over powerful and wealthy American Jews attempting to hijack U.S. foreign policy to favor Israel. He also took steps to prevent Israel's development of nuclear weapons. After he was assassinated, his successor as President, Lyndon B. Johnson, who has been described as having a political career interwoven with Jews, saw things quite differently. He turned a blind eye over the Israeli nuclear program and surrounded himself with Jewish friends and advisors who were actively engaged in promoting the Zionist agenda, some of them plausibly as actual agents of Mossad. And remember this, my friends. John Jay warned us about this on Federalist Papers 2-5 and Washington's Farewell Address on September 19th, 1796. I recommend everyone start reading these things. Most prominent among that group were Crims, Arthur, and Mathild. He's a leading media lawyer and studio head who was a Democratic Party fundraiser, and she is a geneticist, a Swiss-born convert to Judaism who lived in the British Mandate Palestine with her first husband, an Irgun terrorist. Jewish terrorist was the cause which he actively supported. The Crims were regular companions of LBJ throughout his presidency. When a reserved room in the White House and a house near his ranch in Stonewall, Texas, when he was on vacation there. Johnson also stayed at the mansion in New York. At the time of the Six-Day War, when the Liberty was attacked, the Crims were constantly at the side of LBJ, and it's generally accepted that they were both working on behalf of the Israeli government to cultivate a decisive presidential tilt towards Israel. Johnson, in fact, was informed of the Israeli intention to go to war against his neighbors in advance and gave the green light. All right, so even agreeing to come to an aid of the Jewish state if things went wrong. To seal the deal, Mathild was even having an affair with LBJ at a situation well known to the White House staff, the Secret Service. In 1967, there have been a number of documentaries, books, and unofficial inquiries regarding on the attack on the Liberty, but resistance from the unusual suspect has meant that the story has not become better known. Meanwhile, Congress, the Pentagon, and the White House have refused to authorize fair and partial formal hearings that would recognize the deficiencies in the 1967 inquiry, which would include testimony from the remaining Liberty survivors. Senator John McCain was notorious for his first-hand treatment of entreaties from the survivors. Was then Congressman and now Governor Ron DeSantis, a former Navy SEAL. DeSantis now calls himself the most prominent pro-Israel governor in the United States. And he's right. I know for a fact. And if you criticize Israel at a university that's considered anti-Semitic, he signed that. And both parties, rather the Democrat, Republican, including Senator Gary Farmer Jr., okay? Democrat voted for this as well. I told you something, folks. The most serious unofficial inquiries have involved former military officers. In 2003, Admiral Thomas Moore, a former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, formed an independent commission of inquiry took into the attack. It produced Loss of Liberty, a document that includes actual interviews with survivors. The commission, which included Rear Admiral Merlin Staring, Marine General Ray Davis, and Ambassador James Atkins, reviewed all documentaries, evidence in the case, and interviewed both survivors and other naval officers who were involved indirectly. They learned that the Liberty had been surveilled by the Israelis for at least 8 hours prior to the attack, and that ship was both clearly marked as an American and was unmistakable as a uniquely configured, immediately recognizable intelligence collection vessel. Not even close to the profile of an Egyptian horse transporter, as Israel subsequently claimed. During the carefully planned attack, Israeli used radio jamming in an attempt to prevent the Liberty from radioing its predicament. Moore's commission concluded that Israel had deliberately attacked the Liberty. Moore's commission concluded that Israel had deliberately attacked the Liberty and sought to sink it, and it kills its entire crew. The crewmen who were killed were murdered by Israel, while the U.S. should have regarded the attack as an act of war, responded appropriately. The cover-up of what had taken place was ordered by the White House, and the fact that the truth about the incident continues to be hidden as a national disgrace. And an Moore wrote in 2004, he concluded by asking, did our government put Israel's interests ahead of our own? If so, why? In October 2003, the Moore Commission presented its report on the Capitol. Through its audience was often limited to congressional staffers rather than understandably fearful members. 1 year later, Representative John Conyers of Michigan overcame the considerable resistance to have report and some accompanying information entered into the congressional record. Moore and Admiral Staring, a former Judge Advocate General of the Navy, which had been the legal officer in the McCain office in London, who had been allowed to carefully review the Court of Inquiry reported, continued to advocate for an honest investigation of the attack on the Liberty until they died in 2004 and 2023 respectively. Which lead us to the present. and the question of justice for the USS Liberty survivors who will be gathering next month. The tale of the Liberty demonstrates that even 53 years ago, the United States government was betraying its own people out of deference to Jewish power and to the state of Israel. If anything as horrific as the killing of 34 personnel on board the Liberty was, the situation had gotten even worse, as Washington sends billions of dollars to the Jewish state annually, while also giving this kleptocratic government a green light to commit war crimes and other aggressions that will ultimately draw in the United States and could possibly bring about our ruination. It is unpleasant to say, at least, to watch an unrestrained and unprincipled client to do terrible damage to much larger patron, enabled by the machinations of the dual loyalty fifth column. But what is that we are seeing? An actual rot really began with the attack on the USS Liberty, when patriotic Americans died at the whim of a feckless president who loved the foreign country more than his own. One hopes that he is rotting in hell. Today, few Americans even know about the Liberty, even though they are not facing an election, which two presidential candidates will seek to undo each and other in expressing their love for Israel. Trump and Biden should instead take pause and first demand a sine qua non justice for the survivors of the USS Liberty. He's damn straight. And he's the executive director for the Council for the National Interest. And don't worry, he's not anti-Semitic. Well, it's self-explanatory. And believe it or not, I learned the basics of this when I was in junior high school about the USS Liberty. I didn't go too technical, but it was an attack. And there's a lot of questions. And I got more details later on. And all you folks out there believe you're pro-Israel and we should keep on funding them, coddling them, abating them. And you know about the USS Liberty? As far as I'm concerned, you're a treasonous scumbag. Yeah. Benedict Arnold is more honorable than all you clowns that sympathize for this foreign institution. None against the Israeli people. There are awesome folks out there. But when it comes to tyranny, you call them all out. You always got to criticize the tyrants. Go after them. They're the enemy. They're just an example. 53 years, and they all want to kiss their ass. You know what? I don't do that. Doesn't make me anti-Semitic. I don't support ginos on parade. Jew name only. Alright? This is why Ron DeSantis and all those lackeys in Florida, and even the federal government, and all state governments and local, don't matter. If you're going to belly up for Israel, you are the enemy. They should be representing the people, not a nation with government rogue elements in the government. Exceptionalism is not patriotic. And I can tell you this: they can't label me a Jew hater because, hey, I paid homage to men like Merrick Edelman, Aaron Zellman, and Haim Solomon. Look them up. Yeah, I love their information. A lot of awesome people who actually are Jews by heritage and faith. Awesome people out there. The whole thing about fake Jews, also known as the synagogue of Satan, is self-explanatory in Revelations chapter 2 and chapter 3, verse 9. So, other words, chapter 2, verse 9, 3 and 9. Okay? Tells you about the ones that claim to be Jews or liars or the synagogue of Satan. And they're out there. Some people didn't like when I posted a meme of David Wasserman Schultz called her partly represent the synagogue of Satan. They all do, that's racist! You failed the test. when people make those comments, they have no merit. They never take the initiative on doing their homework. They just go face value, go, oh, okay. And same thing that all want to support Israel. We got to do foreign aid, okay. There's even questions, too, the dancing Israelis in 9/11. Well, you don't hear about that. Well, let's blame the Muslims, but dancing Israelis, maybe, so were there rogue elements in the Israeli government maybe involved? Yeah, I'm pretty damn convinced. They're not the only ones. All right? So I recommend everyone just do your homework on this thoroughly. And the stuff I addressed aforementioned. You'd be shocked. And there's one thing you got to look at. Never, ever forget the brothers and sisters that were died and heavily wounded on this horrific event on June 8th, 1967. The ones that are around, may their souls be forever free. I never want to see any of them or have their legacy be in vain. And you know what? That is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or send me something that's interesting, I want to check it out. Whatever you do, please send your correspondence with decorum. Furthermore, I'll leave this footnote on my Spreaker page, just to let you know this actual link. Website has other links. You can go further. And plus, I suggest everyone start looking into this, because a lot of you may have kids. They need to know about this. Everyone has a right to know the truth. If you want to donate, you can go to paypal.me/LuckyLuck3. Once again, thank you for your time. But always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.